Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll just wait for maybe 5 more minutes for people to join in. I had. Yes. Thank you. Okay, great question, Samiksha. So actually, there are three TAs for this course. You can either attend all or you can choose any one to attend. All the three lectures will be uploaded online on YouTube. So if you do miss something, feel free to catch it back on the YouTube link. And I know it's a little bit tough to join three tutorials per week, but you can choose anyone. I'll just start. Okay, I think we have about 20 people here. My name is Chiti Arvind, and I will be one of your course TAs for this course in Wildlife Ecology. I'm a PhD student at ISER Tirupati, and so my session actually happens on Tuesday, but for this week and the next week, which is on the 7th, I will be taking it on Monday. Otherwise, after this, all my sessions will be on Tuesday. So, good to see you all here. As I mentioned earlier, for those who are joining in right now for the first time, all these lectures will be recorded, and your questions and everything is going to be recorded, and this is going to be uploaded on a YouTube channel. This will be freely available to you. Even the course content on these slides will be available for you, so you can join the links and also get to access any additional reading material. This course for the first week is broadly just an introduction. Have all of you gone through the lectures? You can feel free to either unmute yourself and talk or use the chat box. Has everyone been able to? Okay, great. And also, if you have any questions to ask, please feel free to raise up your hands, and I will ask you. And yeah, for any replies, you can just use the chat box. Where will we get the YouTube link? The YouTube link, NPTEL will share with you a spreadsheet which will have all the links of all the TAs that have taken the class. So that will be accessible to you. They might send it to you in the coming week. But if you go to a YouTube channel, my YouTube channel will be my name with ISER Tirupati. You will find it. But NPTEL will share the particular course, these recorded sessions with you. And also feel free to use the Swayam portal discussion forum question section, which is I think it's called Ask a Question. So if you ask a question out there, you will get replies to other people can reply to you. You can start discussion threads. I think it's a great platform to start discussions amongst all your course members as well. And if you have any queries, they'll be answered by us or somebody from NPTEL for any of the technical queries. So regarding any of the course content or any doubts, yeah, please feel free to ask us while this class is going on, and if we are unable to answer it, we will address it in the next session. Okay, so I think we have a fair number of people now. I apologies, I won't be able to ask everybody your names and get an idea of where you all are from, but I'm sure we have a diverse community of people here for this NPTEL course. And as you reply to or answer questions over the next, we are going to be together for the next 12 weeks in these problem solving sessions. So I will get to know you along the course of this. So let's jump straight in. I usually have two screens, but I have only one screen now. So let me know if slides are not visible to you by any chance. I might have to switch between tabs. So yeah. All right. So this is the Wildlife Ecology course taken by Dr. Ankur Awadhiya. And yes, I'm one of the course TAs. So let's begin with the first question. What is ecology? And what do interactions mean? So would anyone like to take a stab on what is ecology? The question of what is ecology? Someone has their hands raised. Lakshmi, yes. Go ahead, Lakshmi.
Ecology is the study of interaction between abiotic and biotic components of an environment. It can be the study of the influence of abiotic components over the biotic components and how the biotic components change over the time. All this comes under the purview of ecology.
All right. Okay. So yes, Lakshmi, I recognize you from the previous course as well. So good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so as Lakshmi mentioned, would anyone like to add on to anything what Lakshmi has mentioned out here as to what is ecology?
Household study.
Sorry, Vineet?
Household study.
It's a household study. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on what do you mean by household study?
In the course, the Greek meaning of ecology is divided into two portions, okios and logos.
Okay.
Okios meaning household and logos means study.
Yes. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
In easy language, life at home.
Okay. Yes. And home can be defined by different set of variables. It can be home where you live or home where any other organism lives. So there are various levels of organization that we will be covering later. And Lakshya says a study of an organism with interactions with the environment. So yes, it is the scientific study of basically interactions, and as Lakshmi mentioned, it's between the abiotic and the biotic world. So can someone tell me what really are interactions and what do they mean? And also give me some examples. So feel free to use the chat box or raise your hands. What do you mean by interaction? There is no right or wrong answer. Feel free to yeah, Lakshmi.
It's like every organism has creates a niche to survive, and the interaction. Basically, I mean, interaction means the day-to-day life of an organism, the prey, size, or the environmental factors like the climate, temperature, and also the oxygen level or the air quality. All this affects an organism, which either is successful in adjusting to the situation and creates a niche, or succumbs to it and dies, just like the survival of fittest. So any organism which is able to acclimatize itself to situation around it, the study of that, how does organism interact with like biotic means, well, let's take birds or let's take a mammal.
Sure.
It's a biotic component. Abiotic component might be the water quality it needs to, the water holes it needs to rejuvenate for, or the presence or absence of certain kind of trees or anything, or the habitat destruction or habitat construction or something. So it's a vast field where we can say that niche created by organism is it successful or it failure. So that's the study of comes under ecology, you know.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's a very elaborate answer out there. Thank you. Thanks, Lakshmi. Lakshya says communication. Yes, indeed, it is communication. Rusbe, good to see you again from the previous NPTEL course. Rusbe says an interaction of how different organisms influence or impact each other. Uzma says study of wildlife in relation to the environment. Sure, yes. Samiksha says action and reaction between organisms and the environment. Great. How about typing some particular examples of interactions? Could I have some examples of interactions? You could pick any examples, right from what is happening around you. Okay, sure. Predator and prey. Elephant population, water availability, host and parasite. Yes, sure. What are daily interactions that you see around you? Yeah, so like an example of that is like pigeons in the city. Okay, herbivores and carnivores. This is a predator prey interaction. Is there any kind of interaction that you see in your house? Any ecological interaction inside your house? Increase of lichen, sure. Decrease of lichen, sorry. In your house, do you not see any ecological interactions? Do you not see any creatures in your house? Okay, mosquito. Due to increase of mosquito due to degrading environment. Okay. Okay, let's pick on that thread of what Lakshmi has mentioned. Yeah, lizards and flies. Okay, great. You find a lot of lizards in your house, and these geckos use um, these walls to climb all over and find flies, watering the plants. Yes, it is an ecological interaction, right? If you have, that's a good example, Param. If you don't water your plants, they're going to die. You need to find the right soil and the right place to keep your plants so that they receive sufficient enough amount of sunlight. And most importantly, household plants, even if you put too much water on them, they can tend to die. Wasp bites human. Sure, that can also be an interaction. It's probably wasps sometimes bite without any sting, actually, without any reason. Humid climate of girl, mushrooms and furniture. Okay, yeah, probably not mushrooms, but yes, mold. You do have mold in furniture exposed to elements. Yes, that's a good example. Sometimes when if you are living in some humid hot and humid cities, you do find a lot of mold, especially if you have kept your house shut for a good number of days and you come back after a long time. Okay, so I think everyone has an idea of what are termites eat the wood of the bed. Excellent. Yes, that is an interaction, right? With the biotic and abiotic world. So yes, termites are found in the ecosystem outside, but they are found in your house also, because we are providing them an environment that is suitable for them to thrive, right? Rice weevil in rice bag. See, the more you think of it, the more number of examples that will come to mind, and you have so many ecological interactions that are happening in your house. No one's mentioned spiders yet, but I'm sure all of you have seen spiders somewhere or the other in your house, either in the bathroom or in the house, crawling up and making some cobwebs in some corner. Ants and food, yes, a lot of ants and food, and you'd be surprised at the amount of food types that ants eat. You will find ants in sugar, ants in red chili powder, ants, red ants even in your clothes at some point of time if it's very hot outside and they move indoors. Yellow hornets eat spider. Okay, I haven't seen this, but and spider eats yellow hornets when they hibernate. Oh, that's interesting. I did not know. Thanks for sharing, Vineet. Okay, so I think that's great. All of you have an idea of what these ecological interactions are, and so this is just a introductory class. We'll be just brushing over several concepts, but we will go in depth into all these concepts in the later classes. So I'm going to go to the next slide, which basically looks at what are the levels of organization in ecology. Plus, can someone maybe type out or would like to hang on, Lakshmi? Anyone else would like to tell me or tell us what are the levels of organization in ecology? Lakshya, go ahead. Lakshya, if you are there on the call, yes, Lakshya. I can't hear you if you're talking. Or you could use the chat box if that's easier for you. Okay, Lakshmi's gone ahead. Amirda Varshini is also typing. Organism, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere. Yeah. Autotrophs, heterotrophs. Okay, so we're looking at levels of organization, and Amirta Varshini is correct, where in terms of ecological organization levels, we always start with the organism. So at the organism level, you have an individual. So it starts, so when we talk about any system at the organismal level, it starts at the individual level. And at the individual level, we can define a species, right? So would someone like to go ahead and describe what these terms are? So after species, or an organism, at the next level, you form a population. So what is a population?
Group of similar organisms using similar biotic conditions to survive and thrive.
Right. Yes, in a particular area, a group of similar organisms form a population. As Arun also says, it's a group of similar species, so they have to be the same species, right? And a group of members of the same species form a population. So Lakshya mentioned subcellular cells tissues. Okay, so that we don't count anything below an organism in the level of organization for ecology. So ecological levels of organization starts at an organism that can independently function. You cannot have cells or tissues or organs that can independently function. When they are all put together into an organism or they build up to form an organism, that forms the unit of an ecological organization scale. Okay, so now can someone tell me what is the difference between a community and an ecosystem? I think I have a figure somewhere. Let me pull that up as well. Here you go. So can someone tell me what's the difference between Lakshya, you have your hand raised. Would you like to take a stab at answering that? What's the difference between a community and an ecosystem? Anyone else? Feel free to use the chat. or feel free to raise your hands.
Community probably refers to the different species, and
Okay.
ecosystem includes abiotic factors,
Correct.
the habitat.
Correct. Right. That's right, Rosebay. So, community includes multiple populations of different species that are coming together, and the interaction of these species with the abiotic factors is classified as an ecosystem level. Community involves only living things, but ecosystem also takes non-living things. Correct. Community made up of population of different species. Correct. But ecosystem includes community biotic and abiotic factors. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So when you have the abiotic factors that come into play with organisms, it forms an ecosystem, right? Before that, it is still at a community level. So when you study a community of species, or a community of a particular region, you are not looking at the interactions of these organisms with the abiotic factors. You're not taking into account different variables. But when you look at it from an ecosystem perspective, in terms of an organizational level, you will see how they interact with all the abiotic factors, and different species will act or interact differently with different abiotic factors, right? So the way a fish might interact with a water source is going to be much different from what any terrestrial animal will interact with a water source, right? So that is for you levels of organizations. So you start at an individual, then you move on to a population, a community, an ecosystem, and when ecosystems come together, they form biomes, and all biomes together form a biosphere. So this is just a schematic representation of these levels of organization. Okay, let's move on to the next part. Okay, so this is something very interesting. I'm sure you would not have seen something like this before. It's a little bit, I'm going to give you hints as we go on, but this is a world map that is showing something, right? We don't know what it is showing, but it is related to a species. So, what is this map actually showing? Would anyone like to take a stab at it? You can post your answers in the chat. Hotspots, okay. Okay, so I'll fine tune this and say it is only for one species.
The range of an elephant or some kind of a mammal.
Elephant, not really. Not really. You don't find elephants in.
But it's a range of it's a range of a particular
Okay.
animal, you know.
Okay, sure.
Ma'am, is it snakes?
No, let's not get into the species, that's okay. But let's build on what Lakshmi has mentioned. It is a range of a species. Can someone give me some alternative words or terms that can be used instead of range? Distribution. I heard distribution from someone. I don't know who that was. I think it was Rusbe. Yes, okay. Sorry, I don't have my two screens, so I can't see whoever is talking. But yes, that is the correct term. So this is the distribution of a species. And what do you mean by distribution?
The area where all the particular species is seen or is available to study.
Sure. Would anyone else like to build on this? An area where a species is seen. Sure. That's correct.
These areas are the particular species is able to survive and thrive in these areas, and that's why distribution is seen. Distribution is also the level of how much the organism has survived or is disintegrating, both sides.
Okay. Okay. Sure. I can take that. Okay. Now let's try and guess. I'm going to tell you what species this is, but any guesses as to what taxa the species belongs to?
Macaques,
Okay.
monkeys, monkey
Okay. So we
lemurs.
have monkeys. Lakshmi, do you want to type that so that everyone can, like, we can keep a track of that? So Lakshmi says monkeys, or I can just type it. Monkeys. Somebody said snakes.
And also, I guess bats, maybe
Okay.
marsupial bats.
Bats. What else? What else? What else do you think this could be? No guesses? Okay, so we have mammals and reptiles covered. What else do you think this could be? Tigers, okay.
Avifauna.
Avifauna, sure.
Ma'am, in this way we will count everything, ma'am.
No, it's something. It's something very common. It's something all of you have definitely seen, like around you or in person.
Crows,
Oh,
butterfly.
peacock.
Sorry.
Peacock.
Peacock, yeah, that's a great guess. It's not a peacock, but indeed it is a bird that is as commonly probably present as the peacock. So, have all of you seen this? Except for the
Myna.
birders on the group.
Myna.
Yeah, I was just going to give others a chance to guess what this could be. But yes, this is the common myna or the common Indian myna also. It's known as, Acridotherus tristis. So, is there anyone in this group who has not seen a myna? You can raise your hand if you have not seen a myna. Has everyone seen a myna? Okay, amazing. So, I'm assuming everyone has seen this bird. So, now can you take a guess as to what the blue and red colors denote?
Red is the
One second, Lakshmi. Sorry, I just let others just take a guess. Anyone would like to take a guess? No. Okay, so as we previously did discuss, this is the distribution of the common myna. Does anyone have a doubt in this? Is this not clear to anyone? This is the good time to ask any questions. Feel free to raise your hand and talk, as well as type in the chat box. Yes, Sanjeet, go ahead. Sanjeet, you can raise your. You can feel free to unmute and talk. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, Lakshmi, I know you are. You might know all of this, but let's just give others who are not perhaps from the birding community to get a chance to speak. Sanjeet, do you still have a question? Okay, so yeah, as Lakshmi has already mentioned, the red area is introduced and the blue area is native. Would someone like to explain this? Is this does anyone have does everyone understand what do you mean by introduced or invasive? Hang on, Lakshmi. Okay, so this NPTEL class is going to be very interactive. So if you don't interact, it's going to be not fun. But if you do interact, it's going to be more fun. And people who have previously done NPTEL courses with me or in a similar field know how this works. So it's great to have some familiar faces here, but I hope we can increase interaction levels, because this is definitely not going to be a monologue. And I'm also not a big fan of picking people and asking you questions. I do appreciate all the interactions. So if someone, does everyone understand what is actually a invasive species? Does anyone not understand what is an invasive species or an introduced species? If you raise your hands, then we can discuss further. So everyone knows what is an introduced species. So can I just ask anyone to tell me what is an invasive species? Okay, Arun says an invasive species means it is from an outside habitat. Okay, what do you mean by outside habitat? How do you define the habitat of a species? Hang on, Lakshmi. Like it is not its natural habitat. Okay, can you give me an example of, I actually have a question below for this, but since we're here, let's discuss what are the invasive species that people know of in India or otherwise? Parthenium, yes, correct. So Parthenium, sorry Lakshmi, what?
Prosopis juliflora.
Yes, okay. So you have Prosopis, you have Parthenium. For those who don't know, these are species of plants. Parthenium is essentially a weed. And Prosopis is a shrub-like thing. Coffee. Okay. So coffee. Okay, now let's hang on to that. Bala says water hyacinth. Okay. So Rupesh says coffee. Laksha says carp. Okay, that's a fish. Coffee is yes, and introduced. Probably yeah. I'm not sure where it came from. I'm not sure if there are native strains of coffee. But coffee is not an invasive species. Why is it not an invasive species? Why is coffee considered not to be an invasive species?
Because it needs particular
Lakshmi,
kind
hang
of
on.
habitat.
Yes, I'm sorry. 1 second. I really appreciate you interacting, but let's just see if others would like to also say something. Would anyone like to have any ideas as to why coffee is not considered as an invasive
So
species?
by itself, coffee will not spread
Right.
and echo native habitats.
Right.
It has to be cultivated.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's an important point, right? So unlike the other species that you have mentioned, like Parthenium and water hyacinth and carp and Lakshmi mentioned Prosopis, they don't rampantly spread in an area absolutely unaccounted for. Coffee is essentially cultivated because it has some economic value, but most of these other things don't, other invasive species don't have really some economic value. But irrespective of that, invasive species proliferate uncontrolled. So out here you can see the distribution of these common myna in places all around the world, and you can see the blue areas show the native area where it is originally found, but the other areas in red that you can see somewhere down here, I think this is Florida, in North America, then you can see in Madagascar, parts of Africa, a few parts of the Arab countries, and a large part of Australia. So out here it is an introduced species and it has become almost like a pest. So this was brought by people via ship, via road, however, into these areas, and the species has been able to thrive in these landscapes, and it has proliferated uncontrollably and is known as an invasive species in these areas. So that's what this map depicts out here. All right, I am going to go to the next question. So now there are various different techniques of studying ecology. Could someone list out, let's forget about the image for now. Can someone list out the different techniques to study ecology? Anyone? Yeah, Lakshmi, go ahead.
The one in the lesser image is a population survey.
No, forget, one second. Lakshmi, forget the image for now. Just tell me what are the ways in which you can study ecology. What are the different methods?
Population count, rehabilitation.
Okay.
System.
Okay, sure.
And also lab test. I mean, like we can have a area demarcated for it, and then we can study the ecological impacts of the particular organisms in that area.
Right.
It can be a part of a beach, it can be a part of a park or national park or something.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. So there are different ways of studying ecology, and as Arun mentions, there are three broad methods. They can be broadly subdivided into theoretical, lab, and field methods. To identify species and count numbers, this falls under the field method. Modeling, experimentation, observation, yes. These are again types of theoretical, lab, and field methods. So there are three broad categories of ecological studies. Sometimes you can study ecology without going to the field at all, because you have so much of data that is available to you online, as well as you can, since they are all interactions, you can find a way to quantify them, and that's what theoretical ecologists do. They find quantitative ways to understand these patterns and interactions, and they come up with certain theories which we or people in the field go out to even test or prove or disprove, depending upon various different conditions. So out here is actually a method that is used to study ecology. Which of these three categories do you think this falls under? Do you think this falls under the theoretical method, the lab method, or the field method? So let me, Arun says field. Okay, so let me describe this image a little bit. So the first image on the left, which you can see with the red box, is actually a satellite image of an experimental setup. This is known as the mesocosm setup that is at the Imperial College in London, and if you zoom in, you would see a similar kind of image.
Can you repeat the name of it, ma'am?
Yeah, it's called a mesocosm. I can type it in, mesocosm. There's a link out here. You can access this link from the presentation that will be shared. So these mesocosms are nothing but tubs and pools, which you see on the right, and here is where a lot of ecology is studied. So what way do you think this is? Do you think this is a theoretical method, a lab method, or a field method? It's a little bit tricky.
It's a lab come field method, huh? Or field method?
It's a good guess. So actually, mesocosms are an experimental setup, which is technically like a lab setup, because each pool has, though it is out in the open, it is controlled by the amount of temperature, the amount of heating that is provided. So they all have sensors in it, though it is out in the open, because you cannot have an area that is this big that can hold these tubs of water. And each of these mesocosm pools have different organisms also present in it. So they are trying to study community level interactions, population interactions, species interactions in this kind of setup. So this is a really interesting thing. I think it's been going on right now for several years at Imperial in London, and there are a lot of papers also linked to this. So if you just look up mesocosms, Imperial College London, you will, let me actually just find the link and post it. This is the link. Feel free to look at it at your free time, and you can also access this from this presentation. Okay, so now this is a laboratory method to study ecology. What do you think is this, and what type of method is this? What is this graph actually showing us? I need some new people to take a call as to what this could be. It's given, so you have the graph right given there. Predator-prey relationship, yes. So what's actually shown in this? Would you like to explain the graph, Arun? Yeah, I know Lakshmi knows. Anyone else? Literally, you have to tell me what is written in the graph. So most of these classes are going to be very discussion based. You are already answering questions, I think, in the test or practice portal, which are mostly MCQs, but ecology is also very well learned by discussions, and even if any of you bring up topics, we end up discussing a lot of those as well. Okay, so Lakshya says if prey increases, predator also increase. So prey decrease, again predator decrease, and so on. Prey increase, predator decrease, vice versa, negative feedback. Predator prey population changes over time. Okay, so great. So now whenever we look at a graph and try to explain it, we need to know what the axes are. So on the x-axis you have time, so time going ahead in time, and population on the y-axis, which is showing from 0 to whatever it goes to. So when it says it also means that there is sustenance over time. Yeah, that's an interesting point, right? So as you can see in this graph, you have the predator in red and prey in blue. So can anyone tell me what is the difference between predator and prey in terms of population? So there's a lot of information that a graph can give you. We all know it is an interaction between predator and prey. So an important part about ecology is also to understand graphs, and if you go on to read papers, you will find a lot of figures and graphs that will give you a lot of information. Sometimes an entire paper you can understand the gist of it by just looking at a figure. So what's happening out here? What can you say about the predator and the prey populations by the information given in this graph?
So, ma'am, like according to any point on the any point of time in the graph, ma'am,
Right.
the predator population is no, the prey population is always higher than the predator population.
Right. That's a great observation. So the prey populations are always higher than the predator populations. Any guesses as to why this could be? Yes, Sandeep. Okay, Rupesh says predator populations grow, they consume more prey, causing the prey population to decrease. Yes, that is correct. That is the interaction that is shown out here. Okay, so we will. Rohit, yes, go ahead. Okay, so we can all agree on the fact that prey populations are definitely higher. There is a fight for food. Yes, surely. Loss of habitat. Okay, so this is something that we cannot infer from this graph because we have been given no background of where this is, what this is, who are the predator and prey. So loss of habitat is something that cannot be inferred. But if there was also loss of habitat, you would not have anything, right? You would not have prey or predator. But out here you can see that the cycle continues with some oscillations in prey and predator. As predator eats prey, the prey is not always catchable, reproduce. The prey may have easy bait for food. Okay, yeah, sure. So usually the quantity of prey and predator over a linear scale of time, food chain possession. Yeah, that's an important point, right? The food chain. So usually you will have your prey, which is a primary consumer, and then you will have your predator, that is a secondary consumer. But the levels of prey are always higher than the predator. Population conflict. Oh, big term. Would you like to explain? What is population conflict? Lim Sumam, I think if I got your name right. Okay, so tell me, are the two graphs in sync with each other? In sync or in phase? Okay, yes and no. Yes. Yes. With a bit shift over time. Nice balance of nature. Okay, so actually in out here Arun is right. They are not in phase or they are not in sync. As prey population increases, predator population decreases, but as predator population increases, prey population decreases, and it is a little bit out of phase, but mostly they are out of like complete out of phase, but there's a little bit of time lag, but they are mostly out of phase. As you can see, the peaks in prey are coinciding mostly with the drops in predator. So there is a kind of inverse relationship naturally, because the more the number of prey are there, the more the number of predator are there, the lesser the number of prey you are likely to see, right? And then there is a point where there are so many predators, but they have no food because there are so less prey. So the number of predators start falling because they have no food. And then because the number of prey drop, because the number of predator drop, the prey have an opportunity to reproduce and again see an increase in time in their population levels. So Lim Sung says the interaction becomes competitive, leading to domination. I'm assuming dominance, perhaps. Okay, so right. So between predator and prey, there is no competition. If you had two predators competing for a certain prey source, then that would be competition. But out here, it's just the interaction is termed as a predation cycle, where one has a positive effect and the other one has a negative effect because the prey does not gain anything by being consumed. So as you can see, there is so much information given in one graph. Sometimes it is good to just stare at it for a while and understand what is shown out here. So this is actually an example of a theoretical model. Since they have not mentioned the predator and prey in this, it is known as one of the famous examples mapping predator-prey interactions, known as the Lotka-Volterra cycle. So
Can type it out, ma'am.
the Lotka-Volterra equation. Lotka-Volterra equation. So the link is given in this slide out here. You will have access to it when I share the PPT. But this is a theoretical way of studying ecology, and this can be reproduced in the field or even experimentally. If one of the most famous examples of this is the what is it, the horseshoe hare, I think, and there is a predator. I don't remember exactly, but it's a hare and a fox, something like that. Yeah, so this has been studied in the wild as well. Okay, moving on to the next question. So Mangifera indica, Panthera tigris, Pavo cristatus, Ficus bengalensis, what are they all examples of? You can use the chat box to type in your answers.
Habitat source like fig tree and mango tree, they are all good ecological. I mean, it harbors a lot of organisms in it.
Okay, what are actually these terms? What are these terms that are indicated, these four terms?
One is mango. First is Mangifera indica, is a mango tree.
Mm-hmm.
Panthera tigris, it's a panther, I guess.
Uh,
And then Pavocus cristatus, I am not sure.
okay.
Ficus bengalensis is a fig tree.
Okay, yeah, so that's correct. So you have mango, you have a Panthera tigris is actually a tiger, then you have the peacock, the Indian peafowl, and then you have the ficus tree, as you mentioned, right? So endemic species. Okay, no, I was not going for that. Are they endemic species? Yes, indeed they are. By chance I have managed to pick species like this. But tell me, what is the why didn't I write mango, tiger, peafowl, fig tree? What's the difference between writing it like that and like this?
It's
Yeah, go ahead, Rahul.
uh, um, so instead of putting them by their conventional names, this question is they are referred to by their scientific names.
Correct. That's what I was getting at.
Binomial nomenclature.
Yes, correct. So Rahul, would you like to tell us a little bit about scientific names?
So scientific naming or binomial nomenclature is a way of naming an organism such that it does not, basically giving it a universal name to prevent confusion.
Correct.
Since species are referred to by different names in every country, and also some species may not share a common name, which may lead to confusion.
Right.
For example, we have panther. So panther refers to leopard, but in America it refers to cougar. So
Okay.
those are two different species.
Right.
So to avoid confusion, Carl Linnaeus came up with scientific naming procedure called binomial nomenclature,
Mm-hmm.
which involves naming an organism in Latin
Mm-hmm.
with two different words, one species and one genus, another one species. The
Right.
first word is genus.
Right. Yeah, excellent. Thanks Rahul for the explanation. So, as Rahul mentioned, this is referred to as Lakshmi also mentioned, this is known as a binomial nomenclature. It is a universal naming system because, as you all heard, the common names can be very confusing, and also different, like the same species, like for example, like the common myna can be called in different languages different things. So, in order to understand what exactly we are talking about and we are referring to as the same species, we have a scientific naming scheme. It involves the Latinized names of several of the genus, which is the first part of the name, and the species, which is the second part of the name. And this naming scheme was brought into existence by Linnaeus, who is known for coming up with the binomial nomenclature. And this is exceedingly important. So, if you read any scientific paper, you will always see the scientific name of the organism that has been studied mentioned at least once, because this is very important for everyone to know what species it is. And nomenclatures can change. The study of nomenclature is known as taxonomy, and the taxonomy of a species can be changed over time, because nowadays we have different methods for species classification, and they have become much more advanced than those before. So, does anyone know how species were classified in the earlier stages? Do you know how they were classified as the species or another species? You can use the chat. Hang on, Lakshmi. Anyone knows how early taxonomists did classified species? Okay, I can give you a hint. It's something very visual. Okay, morphological traits. Does everybody know what are morphological traits? What do morphological traits mean? Morphology and anatomy. Yes, so to explain, yes, that means physical attributes. Yes, based on looks. Visual observation of traits, yes. Lakshmi, would you like to explain?
Sorry, ma'am.
Would you like to explain how early taxonomists defined species?
As I said, looking at the outside of the organism, be it a flea or be it a animal or a bird or whatever, outside whatever it looks common or like it looks like a relative of it, they clump it together.
Right.
And then slowly, as the the anatomical studies started getting intensive, then they found out that only they might be similar in looks, but anatomically they differ a lot.
Okay.
So, and then hence they differentiated it based on anatomy also. And
Okay.
slowly
Okay.
anatomy
Hang on. Pause. Okay. So Lakshmi has hit upon 2 points, important points out here. One is morphology and the other is anatomy. So first is the thing where they looked at visual traits and external appearances, and then Utkarsh, did you have a point to make? Okay. So after looking at these visual differences, sometimes they found that though they were visually the same, anatomically they were different. So that's when they probably cut open a species and looked at the anatomy. But so where do you think such studies was? How do you think such studies were possible? How so? Lakshmi mentioned the important thing where they looked at different traits of different organisms, and if it were similar to some kinds of organisms, they were clumped together as the same type. How do you do such studies? If you are working in an area like, let's say, for example, plants, if you are somebody who is studying plants in some area in India, how would you, if you think you found a new plant, first of all, how do you think you would have found a new plant? How do you know it was a new plant or a plant that has not been described yet? What do you do? How do you check?
Ma'am, sorry to digress. Are these recorded, ma'am? I'm finding I'm facing some network
Yeah, I
issues.
hope it's being recorded. Let me just check. Yeah, it says on mine that it's being recorded. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So, does anyone have any idea as to how we can classify species as a new species or a different species that has not been described yet? What do we actually look at? Okay, so DNA sequences are still a new method. How did people in the era of no DNA sequences do this? Imagine you have no genetic information or no means to generate genetic information. By referring floras, would you like to elaborate more on that, Rupesh? You're getting there, you're close. But I'm not sure exactly what you mean by this. Lakshmi, I think you're going a little bit broad. We are looking into something more narrow. Can I repeat the question? Sure. So you are walking, this is, let's say, the late 1800s or something where there are no means to do genomic studies, etc. And you have found a species that has not been described before, or you think it's a new species. How do you check if it's a new species? Or which genus does it belong to? Where do you go and check this? How did people do taxonomy in the past? How did they decide that this species belongs to this genus or is more similar to these kind of species, or this species looks absolutely unlike anything that has been described so far and it is a new species? Okay, yes, by referring to already described species. How do you refer to already described species? We have examples of this currently. Okay, yes, scientific articles. True, that's a good place to start. But before publication was very predominant and people read such things. Okay, let me. Anatomical feature. Okay, yes, sure. But where am I getting this? Specimens, correct. Right, where are specimens? Collections, exactly. That's what I was getting at. Okay, IUPAC, IUCN, I'm guessing. But yeah, you had no computers at that point of time. So, yes, we look at specimens and collections. Where do you find collections? Herbarium, perfect. So, you find plant specimens in a herbarium. Where do you find animal collections? Museums, correct. So, these were actually, yeah, not parks. But yeah, you can have like arboretums where you do have plants. Yeah, so there were no, yes, so zoos and parks are repositories of animals and plants that are living, but mostly you refer to herbariums and museums, right? So if you've heard of the Kew Gardens, the botanical Kew Gardens in London, and then you have several museum collections all over the world that have specimens of species, right? So, how did people do this? They collected specimens and they did taxidermy and they preserved it. In the case of animals, that can be preserved via taxidermy, or they put them in jars in formaldehyde or something. So, they always had a repository of these collections, whether they're plants or animals. In the case of herbariums, they had systematically pressed leaves and drawings of different flora and fauna, collected the seeds, fruits, and flowers, right? So these scientists or these people who were mostly physicists, botanists, zoologists, etc., would collect specimens, go hunting, or collect plants, and then look at herbariums and then describe these species and catalog them, right? So museums are such an important source of data that we already have, and we have different kinds of specimens that we collect from all over the world. If you go to there are several museums in India, and I think the Zoological Survey of India has a museum in Calcutta, and the Bombay Natural History Society, and I'm not sure where the herbarium collections would be, but I'm sure India has a repository of these things, and you will find a catalog of each and every single species that has been described, right? So these are all very, very important for science and in the description of new species. Now, yes, we have moved on to times where we can just get some genomic data, put it online, and see which is the hit it goes to, and see which is the closest related species or whether it is a new species or not. So now there are genomic ways, but we also still have museum collections, and species now to be described as a new species have to be assessed morphologically by color, plumage, or various different factors. Like you need to assess it by its morphology, anatomy, and genomics, and see whether all these three factors are different from any other species that exists today. And most importantly, genetic evidence is absolutely essential. So, yeah, let's move on to the next question. So, what is the study of biogeography? Can someone tell me what's the study of biogeography? Lakshmi, I'll give you a chance. Let's see if someone else knows what is biogeography. You can break the name and try and describe it.
It's like the study of the different species in different geographical places.
Yeah, so as the name
Study of organisms based on biological realms.
sure, but yeah, as we like break it down
Sorry,
very,
geographical.
yeah, as we break it down very simply, it's just the distribution of species in the world based on where all they are located. And does anyone know who made this very famous illustration? What? Okay, let's say what does this illustration show us? Okay, what does this figure show? What does it look like?
mountain, like as a volcano, or
Yeah, yeah, it's a mountain range, and this is actually done by it's done by a very
Um,
famous scientist. Yes, Vineet.
Ma'am, it's a mountain with ice, with grass, with sand on bottom,
Mm-hmm.
or normal land, and waters insides, and a
Mm-hmm.
volcano. It's showing a complete sustainable biogeography.
Okay, so
All the important aspects needed: the water, the fire, the grass, the food.
right. So it's actually a diagram or a illustration by this famous scientist or geographer known as Alexander von Humboldt. Has anyone heard of Humboldt? Alexander von Humboldt?
Yes,
Yes. So
ma'am.
yeah, go ahead.
Pioneer.
Go ahead, Rahul.
No, that's what I said. Like Alexander Humboldt is a famous German pioneer and explorer.
Mm-hmm.
He also found once he went on an expedition to South America and he noticed why certain species are able to survive and why there are so many species of birds in that place compared to temperate and polar regions.
Right.
So
Yeah. So
that's it.
yes. Yeah.
Yes, that's all.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so as Rahul mentioned, Humboldt used to do a lot of expeditions, and this figure is one of his famous illustrations of Mount Chimborazo in, I think it's Chimborazo only in Ecuador. And this mountain range, what he has illustrated in this kind of an illustration, actually in the small font which you can't see out here, shows the distribution of different plant species across its elevational range, right? And Humboldt made a lot of discoveries during his expedition, and I think he is one of the scientists who has the most, or naturalists who has the most number of species named after him. So a lot of species have been named in his honor and have actually been given a genus or species name as Humboldti, or derivatives of that have been named after him, because he's been one of the pioneering scientists in the field of biogeography. So if you see such illustrations, they are drawn in the modern world. They are all inspirations from Alexander von Humboldt. So all this is content also from your the lectures, if you have gone through them yet. But a lot of information in these problem solving sessions that we will be conducting will be extra information as well. So out here is a map of the Indian subcontinent with a few biogeographic regions. Would anyone like to comment on maybe pick a region or two regions and tell me about something unique to that region? There are a lot of regions, so we can just do a couple. Yeah, Lakshmi, go ahead. You can pick one region and yeah, maybe tell us a few facts about it. Lakshmi? No?
Okay.
Yeah.
Desert. It's desert arid zone which I'll take.
Okay, sure. Would you like to also mention like which areas of India does that cover?
It covers the north-western part.
Which
Uh,
states?
uh, it's like north-western part, Rajasthan, Gujarat, parts of Gujarat,
Right.
Rajasthan, and a part of Haryana.
Right.
And it is as the name suggests, it's a dry and arid region, and requires a different set of ecological conditions to survive and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And there are few organisms which have done that and is suited to that area,
Mm-hmm.
and you can almost call them as endemic there. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to the endemic or thing,
That's
but
okay.
still
Yeah.
there are organisms which can thrive there, like the sand grouses. It's a bird, sand grouse. And then there is camel, which is very common mascot for desert or arid region.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are reptilians, which are suitable or which has adapted to that arid region,
Mm-hmm.
and hence has made it as home and has thrived, like the scorpions and the scarab beetles and such stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that the arid region, the habitat, the
Mm-hmm.
ecological aspects of that habitat molds the organisms there, and those which could survive and adapt, they have thrived, and those which couldn't, they perished. So I
Right.
would say camel and sand grouses are particularly good examples of the arid region. Common Indian bustard also,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's one region.
Okay, sure.
And
Okay,
okay,
that's yeah, thanks Lakshmi. I think yeah, a lot of important points that Lakshmi has made about the arid regions. There are species of animals that are only found in this region, and I think just by looking at this map you can realize that India is such a biogeographically diverse country which has so many different kinds of landscapes. Would someone like to pick another region, maybe a region where you're staying or where you belong to, and talk about something? Yes, Lim Sumung, go ahead.
I would like to speak on the northeastern region part, which is in number 24 as mentioned in the map.
Yes, go ahead.
Particularly speaking, Nagaland is a hilly region where we can find different kinds of species like Tragoban, hornbill, and then recently the Wildlife Protection Society of India has also discovered the clouded leopard, which is found in at the highest, which is only found in the highest elevation of Mount Sarabati, which is the highest mountain in Nagaland,
Okay,
which is
wow.
12,000 feet above mean sea level. And then there are also certain species like seaweed, and then
Sorry,
golden bear,
I
these
missed
are
that. Certain species of sorry, what?
golden cat, seaweed, and then
Okay,
I couldn't remember, but some of the species are being
right,
found in, especially in Nagaland.
right,
So these are the species that which are being hunted down by
right.
people for their consumption, where the numbers of their populations are being decreased, and then where now the NGOs and other um, initiative for the conservation.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for describing a lot of the biodiversity there, Lim Sumang. I think Nagaland is a hugely biodiverse region with a lot of, I think, ongoing research that's happening out here, happening out there, and they are doing a lot of expeditions and explorations. And I know a ranger who is from Nagaland who is doing a lot of bird surveys in the area. So I think that's great that a lot of research is happening there, a lot of discoveries, and seeing how a different land use change can also affect species distribution in various areas. So, yeah, thanks for covering that. Anyone else would like to pick some other region? Yes, Rahul.
I choose the Indo-Gangetic
Mm-hmm.
Plains. So Indo-Gangetic Plains is a region in northern, as is shown in the map. It covers much of northern and eastern India,
Mm-hmm.
parts of West Bengal, and central northern India.
Mm-hmm.
So, as the name suggests, this place is covered by the Indus and Ganges rivers.
Right.
It's a fertile plain. It's an area of fertile plain where a variety of plant species growing.
Right.
And this place also used to have a lot of fauna at one time, and there were several different animals like rhino, elephant, gharial. Like there were several species
Right.
of animals that
Right. Right.
thrived during the old times in that area. But now, due to human inhabitants and human impact on the place, the number of species of fauna has dwindled drastically.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's very true. And the actually the floodplains bring a lot of fertile and alluvial soil, as you had mentioned. So these form great regions for agriculture, and there's a lot of agricultural practices that go on in these floodplains. So yes, the region was very biodiverse and rich. I'm sure it is also, but not as much as before. Yes, there are a few several species that are getting threatened because of a lot of industrialization and yeah, Lakshmi, 1 second. A lot of industrialization. So yes, the Indo-Gangetic plains also do support a high unique biodiversity in that area. Yes, Lakshmi, would you like to add something?
No, ma'am. Actually, just I have a doubt. Indo-Gangetic plain, as you mentioned, is very good for agricultural stuff. So when a human changes the ecology there,
Mm-hmm.
how it can support increased biodiversity, ma'am? Right.
So yeah, so actually, I'm not sure if you have noticed, but the native flora and fauna in that area would not be high growing trees, they would be grasses and grass types. So even things like paddy or wheat are grass like species. And the turnover of biodiversity, though there might be some that were, I'm not sure of what was the original flora of the area, but a lot of grassland or grass driven species are found in that area. So at least in terms of a bird community, you would probably find a lot of birds that are found along the banks of the river as well as in these agricultural fields. I'm sure you have noticed that there are certain species of birds that are found in these open grassland type of habitats. So yeah, but based on definitely the amount of food available and pollution in probably the water and water sources, they have perhaps definitely resulted in species numbers dwindling of fauna. Yeah, maybe we have time for one more region. Would someone like to pick another region? Maybe where you are from or where you are staying? Yes, Lim Sumang.
I would like to pick on Sundarban.
Okay, sure.
Actually, Sundarban, which is cited as a national heritage by UNESCO.
Yes.
So it's famous for its largest delta and mangrove forests in the world.
Yes, correct. And what do
Actually,
you? Yeah.
this deltic ecosystem is the single largest continuous host in the world,
Mm-hmm.
which harbors like a Royal Bengal tiger. I
Yes.
think that is scientific name is Banthera tigris something.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Banthera tigris. And this Sundarban has also is a Sundarban National Park, which harbors the more than 40 or 40 something species of animals, and then 150 or something species of birds are being found in this region.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure of the numbers, but yes, as you mentioned, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and you do file the Bengal tiger in this area, and it's one of the largest, supports one of the largest mangrove ecosystems in the world.
And coastal system is also important, ma'am, in the sense that although all these biographical reels are important in their own way,
Mm-hmm.
I would say coastal ecosystem is much more important in the sense that it shows how vast land is getting converted into a sea or something, like,
Right.
the sea. So there is a land being swallowed by the sea in some places, and in some places new land is getting emerged.
Mm-hmm.
So I live in Chennai, which is a coastal area, and we have areas where the sea has come into the land.
Right.
Like in last 10 to 20 years,
Right.
the sea has advanced in some places, and in some places it has receded.
Right.
So when it recedes, it creates an unique ecosystem, and when it swallows and comes inside, even then there is an intertidal ecosystem which is created.
Right.
So it's a good way of understanding ecosystem and how it works and
Right.
how the nature evolves according to the situation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Thanks for covering the coastal system, which we didn't talk about yet. So yeah, I think India is a highly biodiverse country. A lot of biogeographic zones. We don't need to discuss everything, but I'm sure we can at a later point of time. Thanks everyone who replied for your answers and descriptions of the particular biogeographic zones. So let's move on to some next questions. Okay, so describe the theory of natural selection and oh, what is its importance? Okay, Lakshya has put in a description for semi-arid regions. Um, Hang on, Lakshmi. Would anyone like to describe the theory of natural selection? And maybe you can also use the chat box and let me know who came up with the theory of natural selection. It's a very famous scientist. Yeah, Vineet?
नेचुरल सिलेक्शन ऐसी फिनोमेना है जिसकी वजह से जो फिटेस्ट होएगा नेचर के अकॉर्डिंग और करंट एनवायरनमेंट कंडीशन के अकॉर्डिंग वही आगे जाके सस्टेन करेगा.
Okay. And who came up with the theory of natural selection?
वो नहीं पता.
Okay. Anybody? Would you know who came up with the theory of natural selection?
Charles Darwin.
Charles Darwin. Okay. So, is there anyone who has not heard of Darwin? Please raise your hand. Has everyone heard of the famous naturalist Charles Darwin? Everyone has? Everyone. There are people who haven't. Okay. Would someone like to tell me something about Charles Darwin? Yes, Limsmong. Am I getting your name right? Sorry.
You are quite right.
Okay, great.
Actually, Charles Darwin was a famous who found out the species, the diversity of the species and the adaptability to the environment. He so is gives to a theory of natural selection. For example, like he cited an example with the giraffe. Millions of years ago, giraffe usually had a long, short neck, but with the toughness of the environment and around the giraffe tends to adapt to a situation where his physical body tends to changes with the environment. So this gave him the theory of the natural selection.
Okay, so you bring an important point which we'll probably discuss in the evolutionary classes, but you cover a point regarding Lamarckism, and that was a concept that came up by the scientist Lamarck, and Lamarck and Darwin had conflicting thoughts on certain theories, but yeah, okay, so we all agree that natural selection is a concept that came up by Charles Darwin. And what does actually survival of the fittest mean, and who came up with the term survival of the fittest? Does anyone know? Lakshmi? Or
Survival of the fittest was put forth by Darwin again. He based it on three of the finches in the Galapagos Island, where the birds adapted in such a way that it captured a beautiful niche there. And he studied the beak size and the beak types of the finch birds there. And then he put forth a theory that those organisms which could adapt to a particular situation and thrive, they survive. They have the highest chance of surviving. And then those who can't or who are unable to adapt to the changing environment, they perish. So that's how
okay.
the theory of survival of fittest came about.
Okay. Okay, so well, that is sure a relevant concept, but actually, survival of the fittest, the term survival of the fittest was not coined by Charles Darwin. It was actually coined by someone else. Any ideas? Yeah.
Howard Spencer.
Yes. Yes, it was Herbert Spencer actually. So Herbert Spencer had coined the term survival of the fittest, but definitely it has been attributed most commonly with Charles Darwin in his description of natural selection, etc. Okay, moving on. Could you guess the name of the scientists who discussed about population ecology, community ecology, and invasive species? We have already named invasive species, so we don't need to do that. But any ideas as to who this scientist was? I haven't put up names because then it just becomes quite easy.
Thomas Malthus.
No, not actually. And this particular scientist is also known as the father of animal ecology. This is as per your notes or your lectures. Yeah, your lectures that happened. Anyone? Okay. Anuradha says Charles Elton. It's actually Elton. Charles Elton. Yes, that's the correct answer. He was an English zoologist and ecologist as well. So yes, and I'm sure all of you know about invasive species since we already named them in the previous class. Okay, so there are three types of selection. Now looking at the diagram given out here, could you tell me what are the types of selection that are shown out here? So natural selection can be broadly classified into these three types. What do you think are these three types of selection? Variation, overpopulation, no. So okay, let me describe this a little better. So the red curve actually denotes the original population, like the population distribution, and then you have a selection pressure. Now the selection pressure is denoted by these yellow arrows, right? And so you can consider, and the blue is the shift in the population, right? So you have the red, the original, and the blue, that is the new one, which has been subjected to a selection pressure that is shown by the yellow arrows.
First one is directional selection.
Okay, would you like to elaborate a little bit more on directional selection? Maybe with an example. You can make up an example, it's okay. Yeah, Shruti, you can go ahead. It's okay, you don't have to worry about being correct or wrong. We are all here to add to whatever everyone is saying. Any 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 examples or any ideas as to what directional selection could be? This is a important concept in ecology, types of selection.
This is new concept for us, ma'am. So it's better.
Okay, so any of you went through the notes? Was this not in the notes? Or you could just take a guess. Take a guess as to what this could be. So let's say original is red, blue is what the population has shifted to, and yellow.
Directional means it can be referred to line or line.
Who is talking in the background? I think it's somebody. Could you mute? And then maybe Lakshmi can be heard. Yeah, Lakshmi.
Directional thing means maybe it is either increasing in linear way, maybe. Like change the habitat has made it increase, like the invasive species or something. Where
Okay.
they have increased proportionately or disproportionately also.
Okay.
Or in one direction, it is not multi-directional, but a single direction in the sense either it is completely declining or it's completely increasing in a disproportionate way.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is a fair enough explanation of what directional selection is. When the population of one type is favored over another type, so basically under the curve you have a range of species, and the most famous example of directional selection is seen with the industrial revolution of these white and black peppered moths. Has anyone heard of that example? So, I'm assuming no one has.
Yes.
Oh, Rusbe, you have.
I
Okay.
have.
All right.
Yeah.
Rusbe, would you like to explain?
So, from what I remember,
Sure.
when there was the industrial revolution, and there were a lot of these industries which produced, whatever the output in terms of,
Right.
I don't know what you call it, smoke or whatever.
Sure.
The moths
Pollutants,
blend
maybe.
into
Yeah.
pollutants,
Yeah.
polluting smoke or
Soot.
whatever.
Yeah.
Soot and whatever. So the moths, because the walls and surfaces became darker, they kind of adapted to that by becoming taking on those shades, and they became from what was originally white. The population became dominantly blackish, darkish, or whatever.
Right.
And then later on, when there were some measures put in place, when they realized the effects of pollution and they put measures to control it, and the dark soot decreased, they again saw that there was, a shift in the numbers, and the paler moths kind of again became more dominant,
Right.
from what I remember.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So as Rusbe mentioned, before the Industrial Revolution, which was this time point in like the timeline where there was a lot of industrialization, there was a lot of smoke, soot, and pollutants in the atmosphere. A lot of the entire areas were covered in like black soot. So there were these kind of moths that existed, and they actually existed in two morphs. One is the dark morph and one is the light morph. So here for simplicity, let's just say white and black. And the white moths were really common and the black moths were not really common because they were most visible on light surfaces, so they became easy prey. Now, during industrialization, when the entire area became black and covered with soot, they found that these white moths were very visible against these dark background. So, any predators of these moths, which could be birds or other geckos, etc., they were finding these pale moths very easily, and a lot of them were just disappearing really fast, right? Because they became easy targets to predators. And the dark moths actually survived more because they were subjected to less predation, and they had a higher level of survival. So the level of dark colored moths increased drastically in the population, and the level of white moths decreased in the population. And then when the industrial revolution, when that era was over, the atmosphere was a little more cleaner, and all these black moths that were actually selected for were becoming more visible and subjected to higher predation. So they were getting predated upon, and the white moths that were now less visible and less subjected to predation increased in population. So you see that there is like this there was this fluctuating cycle of different morphs of these moths. So it's exactly the same species, but they have different phenotypic traits. Phenotypic traits are nothing but changes in the visual appearance of any species or organism, right? So I hope this level of this explanation of directional selection is clear. Does anyone have any doubts in this? Okay, Lakshmi says thumbs up. Cool. What about the next one? Can someone tell me what the next kind of selection is? So here you can see the arrows are coming in from both sides, and it's pushing the new population towards the center. What is this kind of selection known as?
Constant selection, like whatever the situation
What,
is there,
what?
the population remains constant.
Constant. Okay, it's actually not being constant. So if you can see, the original curve in red was a little wider shaped curve, but now it's been pushed towards the center. So what's actually happening?
Is it possibly accentuating something that was already there? So, like somebody mentioned the giraffe's neck getting longer. I don't know.
Yeah, we probably won't take that example because it's highly debatable, but it's actually a trait that is present in the population that is increasing. So if you have a range of traits that is explained by the red bell, it's actually the outliers or the extreme ends of it are getting eliminated, and the one that is in the center is getting increased. So such kind of selection is known as stabilizing selection. So the first one is known as directional selection, which is moving in one direction. Then you have stabilizing selection, where the forces act on both sides to increase the numbers that are most common. So as you can see, the phenotypic trait that is most common is in the center, and these forces act on the sides to remove outliers and push it increasingly up. And a good example of stabilization selection, and the most common example, is seen of clutch sizes. So clutch sizes are nothing but the number of eggs that a bird lays in a nest, and a bird does not have a fixed number of eggs like it can lay in a nest. Like there is a small passeriform bird known as a robin, and this is found in Europe. It's a red and brown bird. It's known as the Eurasian robin, and this tiny bird can lay n number of eggs in its nest, right, ranging from probably 1 to 6. But there is some kind of selection that acts upon it, that decides that 4 eggs are the best number of eggs that the robin can lay in its nest. And there is a kind of selection that acts upon this. So if you have a range which is 1 to 6, it peaks at 4. And why is 4 the optimum number? This is because laying less, if an animal lays, if the bird lays less number of eggs, there are higher chances of zero survival if there is a predation event. A predator might not eat all the eggs, it might only eat a few eggs, but if there were a large number of eggs that were laid by the bird, then it'll incur a large amount of energetic costs by the parents that need to bring so much of food to feed the chicks, right? So there is something known as the optimal clutch size, which is designated by a number of these ecological factors that uh, arrives at a particular number or a particular range that is optimal for the survival of this bird in the environment. So this is known as stabilization selection. And is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thanks. So now, what about the third one? So now we learned about directional selection and stabilizing selection. Now we have the third kind of selection where you can see, yeah, Lakshmi?
The fringe traits which were like lost in the previous selection
Mm-hmm.
are given importance, and the particular phenotypical traits which the birds used to possess, that's giving way for the other traits, the fringe traits.
Right.
Like it is the reverse of the previous.
Correct. That's absolutely right. And the opposite of stabilizing selection is known as disruptive selection, and that's exactly what you see in the third graph out here, where you see the selection arrows are pointing outwards, and the peaks are shifting towards the outer phenotypes. So out here you will have two types of phenotypes, and the original phenotype that was more predominant is now not that predominant, and there are a number of hypothetical examples that can be given, but I'm sure you understand the gist of it now. So yeah, remember three kinds of selections: directional, stabilizing, and disruptive.
Ma'am,
Important.
particularly
Yeah.
any example from top of your mind, like
Uh,
what is
I think the most popular example is a hypothetical situation of these rabbits of different colors. So they talk about black, white, and gray rabbits or something, and then the white rabbits were the most common. But due to some predation event or some form of selection that forces the white rabbits to decline much more in number, but the black and the gray rabbits that are on the extreme ends increase when the selection pressure increases. So the white rabbits decline in number, and then the less common rabbits, that were the gray and the black ones, increase or have a population boom. So yeah, that's just one example. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Any idea what the scientist Vladimir Vernadsky is known for? This is in your lecture notes. Vladimir Vernadsky.
Excuse me, ma'am. Again, I'm digressing, but I saw only the videos getting uploaded, ma'am. I don't know where the notes are uploaded.
Are you talking about the class?
Yes, ma'am. Like
This class, the TA class, or the original class?
Anywhere, ma'am. I'm not finding notes anywhere, ma'am. Like in my account, I can only see the videos
Yeah.
getting uploaded.
So I think it was Vineet who asked this question at the start of the class, and I requested him to post it on the discussion forum. So maybe NPTEL can get back to you, since actually we don't have access to any of these components. So we are here only to discuss the content of the course, but all these technical things NPTEL should be able to get back to you. But it's good to just post it on the discussion forum, because they'll be checking that. And yeah, even if you don't have the slides, I'm not sure if it's actually, it might be there somewhere, but yeah, I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, so tell me, What was this? Does anyone know what was the scientist? What the scientist was known for? Okay, Lakshya is asking for discussion forum link. If anyone can share it, please. Okay, so as Lakshya says, he found all these biochemical cycles, yes, which were very important. And then you have, if you go deeper into the biochemical cycles, which we will be covering in later lectures, we will cover the nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and all oxygen cycles that have been that go from biotic to abiotic factors and cycle back to the earth. Okay. So, what is fitness, and can you? Okay, we all know what is fitness, but can you compare the fitness between a goat and a cow, and discuss why or why not? Anyone? Someone? Can you compare the fitness between a goat and a cow?
You can't compare it between two different. I mean, like they say, comparing apples and oranges.
Correct.
You would have to compare two goats or two cows.
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah, that's an important point. So, a goat and a cow, the two of them are two different species. So, you cannot compare fitness between two different species because biologically they are very, very different, right? So, what might define fitness for a goat might not be what defines fitness for a cow. Like for a goat, it probably would mean I don't know, being able to climb steep mountains or edges of rocks, and you don't really see cows doing that, right? Because they are not biologically designed or anatomically designed to function like that, right? They are more about grazing and I don't know, whatever different fitness parameters are for a cow to be described as the fittest does not apply to that of a goat. So, yes, only they can be compared within the same species. Okay, so I'm not sure if you have heard of the British Ecological Society. It is known as the BES. The BES has a large number of scientific journals, and one of the coolest journals that fall under the British Ecological Society is the Methods in Ecology and Evolution. So there is the Journal of Applied Ecology, various different things.
Are these in open source or like they need to be?
So some of the papers are open source depending on if they have open access, but it might just be nice to go through the BES website. They have a lot of different blogs as well where you can get concise information of papers. So who was the founder of BES? Does anyone know? Was it Albert Spencer? Was it Charles Darwin? Was it Thomas Jordan, or was it Arthur Tansley?
Wild guess, Jordan.
Okay, one guess for Jordan. Any other guesses?
Tansley.
Okay, yeah. So it is actually Arthur Tansley who I think came up with the BES Society in 1904 or 7 or something in the early 1900s. So yeah, make sure you go to the BES website and browse around if you're interested in checking out some really cool ecology papers. Okay, so well, a researcher wants to compare the reproductive success of crows in India versus America. Is it appropriate to compare fitness between two populations like this?
No, ma'am. No.
Okay, and why is that so?
Because the habitat is completely different, and the niche they have, the crows have created is also different, and in fact, the species itself is different, ma'am.
Right.
Although we can say broadly termed as crow,
Mm-hmm.
they are an American crow.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be similar or just like the Indian crow.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly like more ravenish than bluish. So it's a lot of factors come into it, ma'am, factor
Right.
into it,
Right.
and both occupy different niches and different habitats, ma'am.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I think that's a more important point is that even if it were the same species, you cannot compare fitness between the same species in two different habitats, right? So they are governed by a number of different ecological factors. So if they are not comparable, you cannot conduct a study because each of those factors might be differentially affecting a species. Uh, who is this? Yes,
we
Arun, do
can
you?
do comparative study. We can do comparative study, but not comparative. Not we can study the differences between both the populations, but not compare it.
Yeah,
As such.
you can't compare them against each other. Yes, Arun, did you have a question?
Ma'am, I just want to ask that actually my college classes go on till like 7:30 in the
Okay.
evening.
Okay.
So, like, is this presence, like interactive session presence, is counting anything for marks?
No. This is not for marks. This is just for us to help you in solving questions. You can feel free to join whenever your classes get done. I think all of the sessions are between 6 to 8 in the evening. So, if any of the days, if you get free earlier, you can join,
Yes,
and everything is online. So, you can access
ma'am.
these
This will be
classes.
conducted every day.
It's on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday.
Okay, and like no attendance is being tracked.
No attendance is being made. This is only for us to discuss with you and to help spur your queries.
Usually assignments, the assignments
Thank you,
you
ma'am.
have to submit, Arin. This is to just
Yes,
add
ma'am.
on that what matters actually is the assignments which you submit should be before the time they have given the deadline. The assignments and only that matters, ma'am. Attendance for the TA classes is not that important. It's more for us to understand the main subject which the main teacher has taught. So it's all about assignments. If you finish the assignments, you can give the exam. If you
Thank you,
can't
ma'am.
finish it, then you might not be able to give the exam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I think, and also ecology is a very a subject that becomes more interesting with discussions. So if you're able to join the discussions, well and good.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But yeah,
Definitely.
if not, then yeah, you can just catch up these sessions later or just see the
And it's
classes.
found in your same channel, ma'am, YouTube channel.
Yes, the same one. I'll be adding a new section for these classes. All right.
Okay.
So I think we have about 3 minutes left. I'm going to stop here. I have a couple of more questions, but since we have a new group of students out here and we are meeting for the first time, I'd like to ask, what do you feel is like the scope of this session for you? What would you like to learn, and what are you hoping to learn in this? You could talk, or you could just type. It'll be nice to hear if you have any uh, thoughts. I know some of the older folks who have been in the previous NPTEL sessions, but for all those who I have not interacted with, is there anything in particular that you're hoping to learn from this course? It's a good time to mention this so that in the later weeks we can incorporate your suggestions. Okay, the subject itself. Is there anyone from an ecology background who is in this course? Or could you give me an idea of what are your backgrounds? Oops, silence. Anyone from engineering, law, management, forestry? Oh, that's great. Okay. Nice to know that, Limsumam. Anyone else from other fields doing ecology, wanting to just learn something new? Anyone who got interested in ecology and just would like to learn more. There's a lot of ecology right around you, so yeah. Yeah, Lakshmi was there for the NPTEL previous course in ornithology as well. So I think it would be good to use the discussion forum and to start a thread to introduce yourself so that everybody will get to know of each other and hopefully start some good discussions on this platform. But any particular things that you would like to cover or learn in the course or hear more about? Do you have any doubts from this class that you would like to be explained? Link for discussion forum. Let me look that up for you. So Lakshmi, if you log into Swayam, there is this thing called Ask a Question. Let me try and share that screen. Okay, Rahul's from Biotech. You're fond of wildlife and zoology. Excellent. Great to have you here. Yes, Rahul.
Just a small thing. So,
Yeah.
so assignments we all get to receive them, right?
Assignments should be on your online portal itself. So I just put up the portal slide. I don't know if it's
There are
visible.
2 assignments already, week 1 and week 2.
Yeah. So Lakshmi, if you look out here, there is a thing called Ask a Question. So if you click onto
okay,
this,
ma'am.
it will
Yeah,
go onto the discussion forum. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot. I actually forgot it, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay.
And I have access to the PC, so I was asking.
Yeah, no problem. And if you scroll down out here, you have the assignments out here. So you have quiz week 1 assignment already put up here. So if you click that, you will find all your classes. I mean, all your questions up there. It's taking a bit of a time to load for me, but yeah. All right.
There is no negative marking for it. There is no negative marking for this. It's purely testing your knowledge of how you have understood the session. And then they will also give the answer to it once the submission date is over.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks for the info, Lakshmi. For those who are doing NPTEL for the first time, yeah. But okay, Dr. Durai Muthumani says you're from biochemistry. Great to have you here. Lakshmi says to cover core concepts as the time frame allows. Sure, we will try and do that as much as possible. So yes, I think time's up, and thanks everyone for joining in today. I will see you next week on Monday as well, and then the following weeks on Tuesdays. So yeah, thanks everyone, and catch you all next week.